So the next thing that we want to do is we want to be able to display our editor window from a menu, right? We want to be able to open the window from a menu. So we are going to add a static function that returns void, and we're going to call it init. And we're going to add to it the menu item attribute and the string window game data editor. And now this will add the game data editor to the window menu and call this function whenever a user selects that option from the window menu. So what we're going to do is have this open our window when we do this. Or when somebody does it. So we're going to add a game data editor variable called window, and that's going to be equal to game data editor editor window dot get window type of game data editor. So basically what we're doing here is creating a new game data editor window using editor window dot get window to get another instance of that window. It returns the first editor window of type T, which is currently on the screen, and we're casting it to a game data editor so that we can store it in this variable. And then once we've done that, we're going to call window dot show. So we're going to show that window. So now we can save and we can test and see that from the window menu, we've now added the game data editor choice, and it opens a lovely empty window for us. So far so good, but we still can't do anything. So now what we're going to do is draw our buttons and our inspector, our editor, so that we can actually edit our data. So we're going to do this in onGUI. So onGUI is, we can think of onGUI as being similar to update in a mono behavior in that it runs continuously when the window is in focus in the editor, or there's been a mouse click or a mouse movement. So generally, when you're drawing your own editor GUI, this is where those functions will be called from. So in onGUI, we are going to do the following. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to check, is game data null? Meaning, has any data been loaded, or are we waiting to load something? If the data has been loaded, then we're going to want to show both the load and the save buttons. If the data hasn't been loaded yet, we don't want to show the save button because we don't want to save empty data. So we are going to check if game data does not equal null, then we are going to do the following. So first, in order to display and edit our game data object, we'll create a new serialized object variable from this game data editor. Creating a serialized object is like when we use the JSON utility. It gives us a representation of that object based on all of its serializable properties. So we are going to declare a serialized object called serialized object, and that's going to be equal to a new serialized object from this, meaning our game data editor. Next, we'll declare a new serialized property and set it to equal the game data property of our serialized object. So we are going to create a serialized property called serialized property, and that's going to be equal to serialized object dot find property game data. So we're doing this using find property, which is going to search through a serialized object and find the property that has the same name as the string we pass it. In this case, we're passing in game data to find the game data property of the serialized object. So next, we're going to call editor GUI layout dot property field and pass in our serialized property in order to display an editor for that property. So serialized property, and we're going to pass in the Boolean true to tell it to allow it to be folded out and display its children. So in this case, we're displaying an editor for game data in our editor window, and this is going to allow us to edit the game data in the editor window in the same way that we previously edited it in the inspector in session 1. That's a mouthful. Okay. So once we have drawn our property field, we are going to call serialized object.apply modified properties. And this is in case the user has changed anything since the last time OnGUI was run. This is going to update the serialized object with any changes the user made. So once we've done all that, we've got this will allow us to edit the data in our editor window. And so what we need to do now is add a button. So we're going to add a button to save, and we're going to add a button to load. So we're going to say if GUI layout dot button save data. So this is going to draw a button with the label save data, and if it's clicked, it's going to call the save game data function that we wrote. So we're going to draw the property, allow users to edit it, draw a save data button that is only going to be visible if game data does not equal null, and if they click it, it will call the save game data function. Outside of the if statement there, it doesn't matter if it's null or not, we're going to show our load button. So we're going to say if GUI layout dot button load, and that's going to be labeled load data. And here, you guessed it, we're going to call load game data. Okay, so now we can save this, return to Unity. And now, if we open our game data editor window, it opens with no data. We see the load data button. We can click it to load the data. And in this case, it's loaded our data. We've got our questions. Where do mice live? Our answers, and you can see we can expand all of these and we can edit them. Let's change some answers. Let's say, what do frogs eat? Pizza? No, they don't eat pizza. They eat ice cream. And where do mice live? Not in a tree. They live in a shoe. And now we've changed the data. We can save the data. We can see that that data is updated in our JSON file, right? Here it is in a shoe. And now we can close the editor window, play our game, hit start. Lions are carnivores. That is true. Frogs love to eat flies, not ice cream. And mice live on land, not in a shoe. And so the round is over. We got 30 points. And we are now able to load and save our data in the editor using JSON, save our high scores using player prefs, take advantage of using the streaming assets folder. So let's just take a last kind of demonstration of why the streaming assets folder is cool, if I build my game, go to File, Build Settings, and choose Build, I'll make a Windows build, and let's put this in a separate builds folder, and we'll call this Quiz Live Build, and save. It's building the player, packaging the assets, and if we look, so here's the exe file, right? If we look in the data folder, here's our streaming assets folder, and here's our JSON file, right? So now I'm not doing anything in the Unity editor, right? I'm going to open the JSON file, and I'm going to say in flip-flop, it's a ridiculous place to live, and lions are tigers. It's not true at all. Let's just say lions are cool, so the answer can still make sense. Lions are cool. Save the text file, right? And now I can open, whoops. I can open my exe file, which is made with Unity, surprise. And we can see, once we start our game, that lions are cool. That is true. Frogs eat ice cream. That's not true. And mice, they do not live in a flip-flop. They live on land. So what we can see is that now by storing the data separate from our application, if we look at that file is 1 kilobyte, right? So if we wanted to push that down over the web or update that quickly or whatever we wanted to do, that's really, really easy. Or even if we just want to hand this to our game designer and say, hey, can you go in here and change flip-flop is too silly. Let's change it to in a cardboard box instead. And all they have to do is that, save, and we're done. So hopefully that has been interesting and helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to hang out in the chat and take some further questions. And thanks again.